all you have called into government for this council and each member. Give them vision to see the needs of our times and to meet them. Give them wisdom in their discussions today and in their words and in actions. And give them courage to meet injustices and to work to bring stronger communities here and throughout the county. We ask this in your Son's name, our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, members. Please be seated. Okay, we'll go through the housekeeping first. I'd like to remind you all that this council meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so we are all on camera. Please be aware you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future, whenever and wherever people wish to view it. Therefore, there is no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place today. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. However, I've had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. I'd like to welcome everybody attending the meeting and anybody watching the meeting via the webcast, but please can I ask that all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Car Park. If we have any motions even or amendments during the meeting, I will need them to be clear, please, before we go to the vote. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 1, which is attendance. The attendance register will be going around the room. Please can all members sign it and send it on, and remember to include any interest on the form. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Dominique Redmond, have we had any apologies, please?
I've had apologies from councillors Elizabeth Haynes, Alan Jones and Ray Williams.
Members, are there any other apologies that we know of?
Lenny Constance.
Yeah. Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Dallas Harris, do you have any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Chair. There is an item on the agenda, which is number 13, in relation to the delivery agreement for the replacement Torfaen Local Development Plan. There are a number of bodies who are listed in Appendix 1 as consultees. So my advice to you is that you have a personal interest if you are a member of any of these bodies. I understand that the following members have interest in relation to that item. So we've got Councillors Alan Jones, Stuart Evans and Janet Jones are members of Blenavon Town Council. I can confirm that is correct.
That is correct.
Correct.
Thank you. Councillors Robert Kemp, Faye Jones and Stuart Ashley are members of Cwmbran Community Council, and Councillor Ashley is a member of Torfaen Friends of the Earth. Can I ask members?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillors Ray Mills, Richard Overton, Gaynor James, Norma Parish and Nicholas Jones are members of Pontypool Community Council. Can I ask members to confirm? Thank you. Councillors Richard Clark, Veronica Crick and Joanne Gordon are members of Crosskeylog and Llanarafon Community Council.
Correct.
Thank you. And Councillors Ron Burnett and Peter Jones are members of Hentless Community Council.
Correct.
Members, Chair, in relation to members' interests, I'm not aware of any other interest, but I would like to say that with regard to agenda item number 19, the replacement head of Democratic Services, Lynn Williams, the head of Business Support and Intelligence, will be leaving the room when that item is being discussed. And with regard to agenda item 18, which is the severance payments, is that if there are any heads of service in the Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection team, if they're present, they will need to leave the room when that item is being discussed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, are there any other interests? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, really, do we need to declare interest because the agenda item about the Greater Gwent Pension Fund, which I am a contributor?
Thank you. No, there isn't a need to declare.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 4, set on page 5 of the agenda, are the minutes from the 17th of April 2018. Are there any issues for accuracy? If not, can somebody move that those minutes are correct? Thank you. Are we all agreed? Thank you, members. Agenda item 5 on page 33 of the agenda, minutes from the 15th of May 2018. Again, any issues for accuracy? Can we move then? Thank you. And are we all agreed that those are correct? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Chair. On page 34, under absent councillors, I've marked down as absent. I did actually have an Education Improvement Board meeting down at Cumbrian High School, which I'd contacted the leader and other people on, and that meeting didn't finish in time for me to attend council, so I did send my apologies because I was at another meeting.
Councillor.
Thank you again, Chair. Under actions on page 60, second point down, for clarity, really, Chair, it says when determined, provide details of costs relating to the temporary traffic lights on Garneroo Road. It's not only Garneroo Road, there were 2 traffic light systems in place on the Vardick Road as well. I'd like that recorded.
Are we happy with those corrections that those are...
Just with reference to Councillor Seaborn's point, I believe apologies were written in the book at the meeting, so if that could be corrected, then that would be appreciated.
If those corrections go in, are we happy that those are a correct record of the meeting? Now, show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you. Okay, agenda item 6, page 59 of the agenda, update on actions. Members, the updates on what's been done to implement our previous decisions are on, start on page 59. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, is everybody happy to note those updates? Yeah, thank you, members, they are noted. Agenda item 7, receipt of petitions. We have no petitions today, so move on to agenda item 8, which is public question time. Again, no public questions. So move straight on to agenda item 9. Leader, do you have any announcements, please?
Thank you, Chair. I do. First of all, on a sombre note, I'd like to pay our respects to Ryan Bullimore and his family. He's the young mountain biker who tragically lost his life earlier this month. Our thoughts and prayers go to Ryan's family and friends, and we very much join in the respects paid by those who attended a ride of mountain bikers earlier this week. So our thoughts go out to his and prayers go out to his family. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the members who attended the Armed Forces flag raising ceremony this morning. I believe that's an important part of our local respects at the start of Armed Forces Week, as we pay our respects to those who served our country in the past and the present as well. Thirdly, I'd like to praise all the young Torvine people and all the staff involved in the showcase concert for Gwent Music last night at St David's Hall in Cardiff. It was an excellent concert, including a wide variety of groups, including the Torvine Big Bands, and it was an excellent evening of choirs and various different types of music. A real testament to the depth of talent there is amongst our young people in Gwent. Next, I'd like to pay another tribute to some local talent. I often like to mention local sports clubs as examples, really, of the success and the commitment of local sporting people. And I'm pleased this month to be able to congratulate Evan Powell, Fraser White and Adam Cole from Pontypool Road Cycling Club for their success racing for the club in Belgium this week. That's on top of success that they've had in the national events. Fraser won the over 40s Welsh Crit this year, and they've really been doing Torvine proud both on a national and an international scene, so I'd like to congratulate them. There's two more sort of notes I want to make, and I believe people are here in the audience. If maybe they could come down and share at your discretion afterwards, and we they can show their certificates that they've won. The first is in March 2018, the Torvine Play and Short Break Service were runners-up in the National Play Awards for the second year running. The Play Service were recognised at the National Play Work Award for the Play Work in Other Contexts Awards. The award linked to the Play Enhancement Project. The project supports pupils on modified timetables and engages with them through the mechanism of play. Many of the pupils supported through the project are looked after children. I believe Julian's here to come down afterwards. And lastly, I want to mention that the Youth Service has applied for and achieved the quality mark for at bronze level. The assessment process involved a review of our self-assessment and associated evidence, meetings with young people, staff and stakeholders. The assessor team congratulated Torvine on a very well organised submission and thanked the young people who had spoken so honestly and passionately about the impact of the youth service on their lives. And I believe David Williams is here as well, along with a plaque that they received as a tribute for that work. So they'd like to come down and we can all give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you so much for coming in. Nigel Aurelius, Assistant Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
No announcements.
Agenda item 10 then. On page 63 of your agendas, the annual report from the Ethics and Standards Committee. Can I ask Catherine Peggington, Independent Chair of the Committee, to present the report for us, please?
Good morning, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me this morning to present the annual report of the Ethics and Standards Committee. The last report was presented to the Council in July 2017. Following the elections in May 2017, we've had 3 new County Borough Councillors and 1 new Community Councillor sitting on our committee. The meetings in the last year have been 5 ordinary meetings of the committee. The next scheduled meeting is the 12th of September 2018 and then approximately quarterly thereafter, although additional meetings are arranged as necessary, for example if there's an urgent need to consider granting a dispensation. The committee met on the 17th of January 2018 to consider the report of the Ombudsman in relation to a complaint made against a member who no longer sits on the Council as a result of an allegation of the breach of conduct. The former councillor had posted images on a website allegedly linking an individual to paedophilia. The decision of the committee was that the former member should be censured. It was pleasing to note that the committee did not deal with any complaints between elected members. It is hoped that this is due to better governance arrangements and training. The next All Wales Standards Committee conference will be taking place on the 14th of September in Aberystwyth. The conference provides an opportunity to reinforce the importance of promoting and maintaining high standards of conduct and the connection between good conduct, good governance and the excellent service delivery. The conference is usually attended by organisations from across the Welsh public sector, including representatives from every principal council in Wales, many community councils, the National Parks Authority and the Fire and Rescue Service. Members of the Ethics and Standard Committee will have an opportunity to attend. The Ombudsman has published an annual report for 2016-17, which includes a section on Code of Conduct complaints. The number of Code of Conduct complaints has decreased by 14% compared with 2015-16. 236 in 2016-17 against 274. The Ombudsman found this encouraging. As he said, the Code of Conduct complaints generally increased in the period before the local elections. The majority of complaints received during 2016-17 related to matters of promotion of equality and respect, accounting for 37% of the complaints made, disclosure and registration of interests, 23%, and integrity 18%, which were the next largest areas of complaint, which was consistent with the previous year. We await the Ombudsman annual report for 2017-18, which will give us more up-to-date information on the current position. The Ethics and Standards Committee would like to stress how important it is that members attend training sessions. A detailed training package was delivered to members following the election in May 2017 to include a wide range of areas. The committee was presented with the report on the 7th of March this year by the head of the Business Support and Intelligence for the outcome of the Member Induction 2017 survey in relation to the training received. It was pleasing to note that 86.96% rated the induction training sessions as either good or excellent, and 82.61% rated the overall content of the induction programme as good or excellent. The committee regularly considers applications for dispensation in respect to personal interests which would otherwise be prejudicial and prevent the member from participating in decision-making. The most of these relate to members' small schemes donations. This year we've dealt with 39 of these. We're pleased to be able to consider these dispensations, which allow members who are particularly active in their ward, through committee and club memberships, to make these donations without infringing the code. However, we occasionally have felt the need to remind members that very large year-on-year donations to the same organisation need to be considered very carefully. The committee continues to receive reports on the level of attendance at meetings, seminars and training sessions as part of its role in promoting high standards and supporting members in their training and development regarding the code, always with the intention of helping members to perform their duties effectively and to aid public understanding of the demands and competing priorities members have when balancing every day-to-day tasks. The committee received a report at its last meeting on the 6th of June. The committee was pleased to note that members' attendance at committees had improved since they were last presented with this information. It was, however, noted that attendance at the optional Monday afternoon policy seminars could be improved. This concludes the annual reports of the Ethics and Standards Committee, and I'd like to thank Delith Harris for her help in supporting compiling this report. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Catherine, for that report, and thank you and your committee for all the work you do on our behalf. I'd just like to say that it's encouraging to see the decrease in numbers that you mentioned earlier, and I hope it continues in that vein. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. In that case, then, the recommendations are on page 64 of the agenda. Do I have somebody to move and second those recommendations? Yeah, move in, second in, thank you. From a show of hands, all those in favour. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Moving on to agenda item 11, at page 69 of your agenda, is the annual governance statement. Can I ask Delith Harris, Monitoring Officer, to present the report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present the annual governance statement for 2017-18 for approval. And the purpose of that statement is to outline the governance processes and arrangements that have been operating within the authority for 2017-18. The statement is shown in the appendix and has been prepared by the officers in the Corporate Governance Review Group, whose remit is to ensure that the Council is achieving and maintaining good corporate governance. The statement was considered by the Audit Committee at its meeting on the 14th of March this year, and the statement has been amended where appropriate following comments from the committee. The statement is based upon the revised Code of Corporate Governance, which sets out Torvine's approach to achieving and maintaining good corporate governance, and the statement is consistent with the principles contained in the Code, and the principles are set out in the statement as A to G. The contents are not significantly different to the statement that was presented to Council last year, and the arrangements, it is considered that the arrangements the Council has in place are effective. I don't propose, therefore, to go through the statement paragraph by paragraph. I will assume members will have read it. So the recommendation is that the Council approves the annual government statement referred to in the appendix. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions or comments on the statement? In that case, can somebody move and second? Thank you. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? No, thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Moving on to agenda item 12, page 85 of your agenda, statement of accounts. Now, Dave Lilly, Head of Financial Services, to present the report for us, please.
Good morning, everyone. This is the annual report that we bring to Council to present to you the audited accounts of the authority and the Greater Gwent Torvine Pension Fund. I'm pleased to tell you that following submission of both sets of accounts to the auditors in May 2018, the external auditor has completed their review of the statement and will be intending on providing an unqualified audit opinion for both sets of accounts following this committee today, subject to the usual governance arrangements of signatures being completed. The audit committee of June 2018 reviewed the statement of accounts and the accompanying audit reports for both bodies and made no comments that they wanted to bring to this committee, this council. The pension fund also received in June the report of the auditor and the subsequent pension fund report as well. Within the covering report to the statement of accounts, I referred to in paragraph 3.4.1 that we were awaiting some guidance from the Wales Audit Office on the treatment of the council tax reduction scheme. I'm pleased to say that yesterday afternoon we received notification that no adjustments are required to our accounts. So we'll still have, we won't have to do some late adjustments to our accounts, shall we say. So on that conclusion of that, everyone, I would like to just open it up for questions, and I'm pleased to take any questions that may come.
Peter?
I'd like to thank Dave for that report and for his hard work on this. This might seem like quite a dry report, but it's only dry because of the effectiveness of the work he does and the processes that he leads along with Nigel and the other people in that department. If it was a more exciting report, that would be a sign that they're not quite so effective. So thank you for all that work that you do. It's very much appreciated, and we shouldn't take it for granted as members.
Thank you, members. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, can I ask you to move and second recommendations? Thank you. Show of hands, all those in favour of the recommendations. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Those recommendations are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 13, page 269 of your agenda, the delivery agreement for replacement Torvine Local Development Plan. Can I ask Robert Murray, Principal Planner, to present the report for us, please? Oh, yeah.
So I'll just introduce this report. You've already seen the draft delivery agreement. This is now, after the 4 weeks consultation, the finalised document, and it's required so that we can formally start our process towards a new LDP. Our LDP will run out in 2021, so it's important that we crack on. Some points that I wanted to highlight for members is that, in particular, the community involvement scheme. As leaders in your communities, I'd really be grateful for any help that you can provide in order to help planners engage with all members and all groups in the community in order to make the best plan possible, because that is key to this. The delivery agreement is key to making a good and sustainable and holistic LDP, to have that feedback. There's also a commitment to an easy read version, which I'm sure members and the public will be very pleased to hear. Planners have their own language. And one last, that's no offence to planners. And one final point to make is that there is a significant change that you'll note in the delivery agreement, in that we've got to speed up our process by 3 months. This has been directed by Welsh Government, as they have said that they will not support, or it is indicated that they will not support a delivery agreement that is not within the 3.5 years. So that will put extra pressure on the production of the agreement, but the LDP, but it is where we are. So with that, pass on to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Yes, the purpose of the report is to seek Council's approval to submit the Torfaen Local Development Plan Delivery Agreement to Welsh Government for agreement. Approval of the DA by the Welsh Government would trigger the commencement of Torfaen's replacement LDP. At its meeting on 17th of April, Torfaen County Borough Council approved the commencement of a full revision of its local development plan, which will result in a brand new LDP for Torfaen for the period 2018 to 2033. And at the same meeting, Council endorsed a draft delivery agreement for targeted consultation with specific consultation bodies. A number of responses were received, which have been reported and considered in detail in Appendix 2 to your report. The appendix also details how the draft delivery agreement has been amended in relation to the comments made. The responses and general comments are on the whole not considered to require any significant changes to the delivery agreement. There have been a commitment to easy read version of key documents as requested at the last meeting, and a copy of the easy read delivery agreement has been circulated to you in advance of this meeting, so I hope you have all received a copy of that. The most significant change is made, as well as Fiona indicated, is that the Welsh Government have indicated that the timescale should be reduced from 3 years 9 months to 3 years 6 months. Reducing this timescale to 3.5 years is considered to be highly challenging, given the significant processes involved in delivering the new LDP. However, for expediency and the reasons detailed in the report at paragraph 6.5 to 6.6, we have acquiesced to the Welsh Government's timescale, and the amended timetable is now included in the delivery agreement. Finally, with publishing documents of this kind, there may be need for some small minor amendments in terms of grammatic or kind of just in relation to the process of this kind. So I'm asking for a further recommendation in the report, in the report to the Council, that they delegate authority to the Chief Officer, Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection to make any factual corrections or minor amendments to the delivery agreement as considered necessary. This is to ensure that if there are any minor changes needed to the document, these can be agreed by the Chief Officer without having to report them back to Council. Thank you, and I present the report and recommendations for your considerations. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that. Members, are there any questions or comments? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the executive member for the report and the officer as well. It's just a quick question, really. Whilst I'm sure most members support that we need to submit the LDP and get cracking on it now, especially in light of the Welsh Government not agreeing to the extension, the 3-month extension that we'd sought. Just a question really on paragraph E with regards to the Welsh Government consultation. They're consulting at the moment on this green paper, bizarrely entitled Strengthening Local Government Delivering for People, but this is page 274. And it's proposed, the key proposal is a reduction from 22 local authorities in Wales to 10. So my question really is basically, has the Council's view changed on that, and is it something unusual that within the context of the LDP we are including a consultation paper, or is it in effect that the Welsh Government is expecting us to put something in place within the LDP concerning the proposed mergers?
Thank you. Yes, in relation to this, basically the earliest the mergers could actually occur be 2022. So we've been doing significant consultation with Welsh Government and also our neighbouring authorities, as well as to how the best way forward for local development plans, and indeed the development plan system in South Wales is best done in this kind of potential changing environment. We're working collaboratively, particularly with Monmouthshire, but also Blaenau Gwent and some of the other surrounding authorities, to ensure that we're doing as much work as we can collaboratively and sharing evidence and so on. So to hopefully ensure that all of those things are coordinated between the various authorities, depending on whatever future there is for that. I'll say the one thing we do have control of, obviously, is to our own LDP in an uncertain kind of way forward. I think this is why we have chosen this, and the review report went through the various options that there were, which are considered at the April Council. What we do have control of is obviously our own LDP, which is why we're looking to progress that as quickly as we can to get that through. I say, so whatever changes there are, obviously we may have to adapt to those in the future, but the main thing is to have our own development plan policies and to protect us in the future as we can here. I'll say we can't obviously anticipate how everything will transpire in terms of local government reorganisation, whether it works, whether it happens at all. But obviously we're making sure that Torfaen is protected in terms of development plan policies as much as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you for the report, very good report. And I particularly encouraged the report that you've put out to the public as well, as Fiona's referred to earlier. I think it's a much easier map to follow than what we currently have. The question I need to ask is, because I mean this was a tight delivery originally, but now it's been condensed again. What effect will this have on the staff? The staff able to cope with the work involved with that, or will you be getting more staff to assist?
Thank you. The delivery agreement does indicate the resources available, but obviously I think there's potential there as well that, I say, due to the importance of the LDP to the council, there is potential that we can seek additional resources if there's need for, say, additional staff to be kind of either seconded or kind of employed, such as additional research officer or whatever. If we need those for a short period of time, there's potential that we can do that within the department employed for that. So yes, it is challenging, but I think we've indicated in here, provided that I think we have the resources and with the will, I think that we'll stay with that timetable and get through it. So thank you, and thank you for the easy read, which obviously Council recommended. We've got a commitment that we'll do the key document stages of consultation, which will be the draft delivery, the preferred strategy, and also the deposit plan. We'd also produce easy read versions for those to ensure the public can be involved at those stages as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Karen.
Thank you, Rob. This is a difficult process, and I think you've made it considerably easier for us. I just wish Welsh Government had done the same. What I'm sort of asking about here is the drop dead date is the 31st of March 2021. The green paper is looking at 2022, so presumably if this LDP process goes through everything and the Welsh paper goes through as expected, have we any idea what will happen after 2022 if there is a reorganisation? Will our LDP remain in place, or will we immediately have to start doing a new one on the new boundaries? And what happens in that intermediate period? Have Welsh Government given us any indication of what they're thinking about?
I'm not certain on that, but obviously if we have an adopted development plan, then that obviously I believe will continue forward until it's replaced. It will give the period 2018 to 2033 for Torfaen. Obviously the new situation will require a review of that plan, but in the meantime, obviously that would remain, as I said, remain the development plan in force. Until replaced. But obviously the new situation would require a review of how we looked at that. But also in the context of changing the new National Development Framework, and also the SDPs are coming forward as well. So we have to keep the position of the development plans in monitoring anyway. So if there are changes coming forward, we'll need to look to review the plan. Obviously during the preparation of the LDP, we can take account of those and feed them in at certain stages. But when it gets more difficult once we've gone past the deposit stage of the plan, because obviously that is set as our plan. But I think we can adapt it until then, and obviously once we're through deposit, it should be hopefully fairly straightforward to go through examination to adoption, and then obviously the plan would be in place until obviously replaced by any new structures that are coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments, members? In that case, recommendations are on page 275 of the agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder for them? Thank you. A show of hands and all those in favour of those recommendations. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. On to agenda item 14, page 315 of your agenda. Cardiff Capital Region City Deal, the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee arrangements. Can I ask Lynn Williams, Head of Business Support and Intelligence, to present the report for us, please?
Thank you. Good morning, members. This report is seeking Council approval to endorse the proposal that Torfaen shall participate in the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and if this endorsement is given, to nominate a non-executive member to represent Torfaen on the committee, and to nominate a deputy member to attend meetings in the absence of the appointed member. In accordance with the Local Government Wales Measure 2011, the Council's Cross-Cutting Resources and Business Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered and supported this proposal at their meeting in June. Following that scrutiny, Council is now required under the same legislation to endorse Torfaen's participation and nominate accordingly. It is suggested that the nomination should be reviewed annually at the Council's AGM in line with other appointments to joint committees. Two other recommendations made by the Scrutiny Committee in regards to the terms of reference to the new joint committee will be forwarded to Bridgend Council, who are the host authority for the new joint committee, for consideration at the meeting of the first joint committee. Thank you.
I bring the leader in first.
Can first move that we approve the proposal. I think it's very important to establish a strong overview and scrutiny committee across the City Deal region to look at the City Deal. That's something I'm always happy to talk with members about, whether they're on that scrutiny body or not. If members ever had any questions or any concerns, they're more than welcome to approach me. Given the importance of the strength of that committee, as the majority group, we thought long and hard about who to nominate, and we've suggested two individuals who I think will be more than up to the task of providing strong and independent scrutiny of the workings of the City Deal. So I'd like to move Peter Jones as our representative and Kelly Preston as the deputy.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, suggestions on this one? No, can I have a seconder then for that? Yeah. Can I have a show of hands then, all those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 15 then, page 331 of the agenda, Welsh Language Standards, the Annual Report 1718. Can I ask Alan Vernon-Jones, the Welsh Language Officer, to present the report for us, please?
Bore da, and thank you for allowing me to come here today. I'm here to present the annual monitoring report for the Welsh Language Standards for 1718, and to seek approval for publication of the report on the Council's website, and also made available in other Council offices which are open to the public. Under Standard 158 of our compliance notice, the annual report, as I said, must be published on the Council website no later than the 30th of June. Standard 170 then requires us to report on four key areas: complaints, Welsh language skills of employees, Welsh language training of employees, and also the recruitment and assessing the skills of vacant and new posts that come to light. You'll see from the report that the complaints received were only received through the Welsh Language Commissioner. It's a little bit frustrating for us as officers because of that lengthy process through the Commissioner's framework, and could take anything up to 6 months to come to a determination on those complaints. Whereas, if they came directly to us, within a week or 2 weeks, we could resolve those complaints. But it is a framework that is in the Welsh language measure, and we have voiced our concerns that with the reform now of the Welsh Language Commissioner's post, whether those complaints will be directed in another way. You'll also see from the Welsh language skills that we still, that there are still low numbers of Welsh speakers within the authority. But by combining the other two elements of this report, the training and the recruitment, and assessing those skills, and recognising that we are in South East Wales with a low number of Welsh speakers, that the recruitment is combined with that training, and that we're able to encourage that anybody applying for a post, that we can offer that training and build up those skills internally as well. So, yes, I propose that, I hope to seek the approval of the report to be published on the Council's website. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, members, any questions or comments? Ida?
I'd like to thank Alan for the report and for the work he does on this. It's much appreciated by those of us who are councillors, and I think it shows that we do our best as a council to show commitment to the Welsh language, and within, as he says, our resources, both financial and both noting the low numbers of proficient Welsh language speakers that we have in our staff, our human resources too. So thank you for the report and for the work that he does.
I got Hugh Evans. Hugh Even.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask a question, please. I recognise that we've got a relatively low number of fluent Welsh speakers working within the council in the different areas, but then that's fairly typical and representative of the borough, where we've got less than 9% of the residents within Torfaen actually being able to speak Welsh to some degree or other. The question I wanted to ask, though, was could we have a further update with regards to the issue of proportionality on page 332 at the top, item 5.3. The council, after seeking legal advice, had challenged 32 of the standards on the grounds of reasonableness and proportionality, and following constructive dialogue, the council was able to agree on those standards that would be most challenging. Can we have some further feedback on that particular point there, please? Because in these times where we've got to look at every penny, I think the financial implications where we're being asked to adopt the Welsh language fully across the board, we need to take into account this reasonableness and proportionality.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. We have to be proportionate and reasonable about what we can deliver. There are two elements of it. Regarding the 32 standards that we did challenge, we did have constructive dialogue with the Commissioner's Office. Of those, 18 were changed, and they were either removed or we were given some exemptions from those 32 standards. The other point I would like to raise is the fact that we're still awaiting 2 years down the line for some guidance in terms of these standards. We will continue, what we initially did as a council was have our own interpretation of the standards, and we are still working to those, and will continue to do so until these guidance come available. But we are 2 years down the line, and we haven't had that clarity from the Commissioner's Office on what exactly, these standards mean. All right.
I got Stuart Ashley first.
Thank you, Alan, for that. I was minded of the fact that you've been in front of the Resources Committee over the last 4 years, twice on this subject, and the standards from the Welsh Commissioner and the fact that we are very low on the take-up of Welsh speakers around here. But I think the Resources Committee tried to offer some suggestions about where we could recruit Welsh speakers from, and bearing in mind that it's taught in all the local schools around here, and bearing in mind that certain members of this council are even learning Welsh, it's an issue for South East Wales, and I think you do an amazing job considering the low resources, the resources we've got as a council. I think we punch much above the weight. That was something that came through the two times we scrutinised it. I think the chair's agreeing because she was sat on the committee as well. So are there any things we can do? And I take into account what you were saying also about the standards and what we do need to do more.
Well, this council is very proactive in terms of allowing staff to be released for training. We are going to be introducing some other elements, in promoting the language locally as well. We need to be doing things like Word of the Week and making those more publicly visible. But we'll continue to work with departments, with our Human Resource Department, to look at that recruitment and that training element, and your support on that really. In allowing staff to go to that training.
I've got Janet Jones next, and then Ronnie.
Chair, Councillor Stewart Ashley asked the questions I was just going to ask as well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's like Councillor Bevan said, that less than 9% in Torfaen speak Welsh anyway, and I don't think that's going to alter much in the near future at all. I mean, people in this area, the southeast, it hasn't been a Welsh-speaking area for a century or more, so it's going to be a struggle to get there. But what I found quite disturbing is, as Alan said, it's been 2 years for the Welsh Commissioners to make decisions, and that's a long time, isn't it? 2 years.
Yes, it is a long time, and we are seeking clarity on that, on getting that guidance, and not just Torfaen, but all the other 22 authorities are asking the same question: where is this guidance to get these standards across all authorities the same? So, yeah.
Stuart Evans.
Thank you, Chair. So in the same vein that Councillor Burnett has just mentioned about the 2-year wait for the guidance from the Commissioner, which I find totally unacceptable. And you pointed out, Alan, as well, that the other authorities are in the same boat as us. Are we working collectively to petition for a better outcome?
Well, certainly, there are changes afoot, like I said, with the Welsh Language Commissioner's Office changing into a commission, which has been publicised through the Welsh Government. So there are changes there. There is a draft guidance document out there, but it hasn't yet been approved, and it's not likely to be approved until, the timetable is the end of the summer. But as I said, it's a long time coming. We have, as an authority, been proactive in getting this interpretation document that we have on Swoop available, on what we will deliver and what we're able to deliver proportionally and reasonably.
Okay, Dave Daniels.
No problem.
Yeah, on that. Individually, as councils, we all have been quite proactive, as Alan's just said, in challenging and kind of having a dialogue, quite a constructive dialogue as things turn out. I know there's the two-year wait for clarification because some of these standards are open to interpretation, and we basically just going on what we understand them to be. But in the main, we've had good dialogue with the Welsh Commissioner's Office, hence why 18 of the 32 standards that they previously asked us to uphold, they've obviously relaxed on that because they've seen, in terms of proportionality, and the question from Hugh, they have recognised the challenges that we've got. But individually as councils, we've all made our own challenges to the standards that we've been set according to our own ability and proportionality. And I myself have been down to Cardiff and met with the Welsh Language Commissioner, and I think that was 2 years ago, funnily enough, and she was quite reasonable actually. So we do in the main have a good dialogue going on, and I think it is a reflection on the hard work of Alan and our colleagues that that this has been relatively smooth, where it was looking a bit bumpy at one point, where it looked like it might be a tremendous strain on our resources, and it is absolutely to the credit of Alan and our other officers that isn't the case.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, members? Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Do we have any information in terms of the number of requests that we receive for provision of information in the Welsh language, and information perhaps on telephone system in terms of how many inquiries are actually conducted in Welsh, in the Welsh language? I think that would give us more of a feel for the take-up within Torfaen.
Well, obviously, I don't have those figures to hand, but I can say, you know, we have got our 3 Welsh primaries within Torfaen, and also the regional secondary school. So they will, you know, those children do visit the borough, do use Welsh language outside of the school. But, you know, I can certainly bring that to council, you know, those figures. All right.
Okay, thank you. Those recommendations then are on page 332 of the agenda. Can I have somebody to move and second them? Thank you. Can I have a show of hands then? All those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Mr. Allen. Okay, agenda item 16, page 345 of the agenda. This is a council petition on the unauthorised removal of a section of hedgerow adjacent to St Giles Road in Cwmbran. May I ask Richard Lewis, Head of Planning and Development, to present the report for us, please.
I've got a little intro as well, but it's not much different from Chair's, to be fair. Members will recall that in June 2017, that was handed a petition regarding a hedgerow that was removed, and it wasn't within the planning permission that had been set down. So this is an update as to how this has been dealt with. I know it has been a time. I think I really want to stress that planning officers have been working diligently to try and find the best outcome possible for this issue. So I'll leave it to Richard.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Just to give you some context to this, the hedgerow is along one of the boundaries of a development site that we gave planning permission for back in 2015 for 219 dwellings. And that was phase 1 of a wider development that was allocated in the local development plan. That planning permission included 3 footpath links from the development site through this hedgerow onto St Giles Road. And the requirements of the planning permission was that before anything was done, full details of the footpath link should be required for us to approve, and also the remainder of the hedgerow should be retained thereafter. But during construction, parts of the hedgerow was removed by the developer, and it didn't comply with the planning permission, so it was a breach of the planning permission. And given the damage to the hedgerow, after extensive discussions with the developer, we did agree that they would resurvey the hedgerow and they would provide a comprehensive package of mitigation for the parts of the hedgerow removed and for the long-term maintenance of the hedgerow. That took a long time to secure, but eventually it culminated in a planning application which was supported by an environmental management plan. That plan showed where the hedgerow would be mitigated with new planting, and also what they would do in terms of the long-term maintenance of the hedgerow. That application was approved by the Planning Committee last month, and as part of that approval, it was subject to a Section 106 agreement, and that agreement, it hasn't been done yet, but it will contain clauses to make sure that the developer does adhere to the environmental management plan, puts adequate monitoring regimes in place, and that they are signed off, those works are signed off by a competent person. The Planning Committee also asked that we, as Enforcement Authority, monitored progress on that, and we did agree to do that. The works will start in September because it's the next planting season, and as I say, we will monitor it from that date to ensure compliance with the plans that have been approved. I acknowledge that it took a very long time to get to that stage, But I do believe that although it took so long, we have achieved the best possible outcome for the hedgerow. And as I say, it was approved by Planning Committee last month. So this report really updates you on all of that and is for your information. But I'm happy to answer any questions if members have them.
Jennifer?
Just want to thank Richard and all his team for the effort they put in getting this agreement. I know it caused a lot of dissatisfaction with the Planning Committee, but we thank you for your diligence and hope it continues. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Burnett next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Richard. Yes, and you know I sat on the committee with you with that. What I would like to see is, if with any developers, lots of development going on, heavy penalties put on these developers if they could break the plan applications, so they know the consequence of it. So I'd like to see heavy penalties set for developers if they do this again.
I acknowledge what you're saying, and there are things that we can do from an enforcement point of view. However, the guidance is very clear in the enforcement guidance that we deal with, and that is that we only take action in the last resort. And one of the reasons for that is that you can get far more out of it if you are able to negotiate and agree with the developer an outcome rather than go through the enforcement. So in this particular case, totally acknowledge what you're saying, and if it gets to that stage, there are penalties certainly. But whilst the developer is cooperative, and he was in this instance, notwithstanding the time, we achieved, as I think, a better outcome than we would have if we had taken action. But I acknowledge what you're saying here.
Hello. Thanks for the report. This was an awful case in terms of what happened. Sorry, we lost the... I'll speak and again his name, sorry. This was an awful case in terms of what happened in terms of that hedge, and I appreciate the report. To avoid this happening in the future, what lessons have we learned and what will we be doing in future in terms of planning to stop the developers getting away with this sort of thing?
There is enforcement action, so because the permission required the retention of the hedgerow and required these links, full details of these links to be provided, there is action we can take when those are breached. But as I said, we do try and opt for the route of negotiation and agreement rather than that. We can't really prevent it unless we're up on site all the time, because it came to our notice because residents complained. And when the residents complained, we went straight up there to have a look at it. And at that stage, we were able to stop it from happening. So we can't stop it unless we're on site. However, what we are doing is making sure that where we do have these permissions in place, and especially if we've got a Section 106 agreement, we're making sure that the works are properly monitored and that competent people are signing them off. In that way, where we have trigger points in the clauses, we can make sure that they're actually being complied with. And that, I think, is that we haven't really done that before. This is a much more robust approach, and I think it's the approach that we'll be taking in the future.
Okay, got Faye next.
Hello, thank you for that. I would like to say that as the County Councillor for St Giles, I'm still very, very concerned that this large company did this, I think, to perhaps take more land for gardens and perhaps make more profits. And I've got two questions, really. Can we trust them to put this hedge back properly in September? And how long will we monitor how they look after the hedgerow after this? Because it's the length of time, or once they're out of the area, will it all just stop, which is my huge concern. Thank you.
My own belief is that the developer has learned his lesson. I believe we worked together very well to get to where we got to. In terms of the monitoring, yes, I believe he will do it. But because we've built in this monitoring progress, we will look at the work at different stages. There'll certainly be an annual report submitted back to us to say what's been done. And I think that goes on for about a 5-year period. But we're currently negotiating that as part of the 106 agreement. But I am confident the developer will in future abide by it.
Thank you for that. Can I just say I'll be very disappointed if we don't monitor them for the next 5 years to make sure it's put back adequately.
Okay, I've got Stuart Ashley next.
Thank you for what you've done on that enforcement issue, because I was quite shocked when I went up
when I went up to see what happened up there. It raises a bigger issue, and it impinges on the LDP and what we're doing in development, because we're talking future generations issues here, we're talking ecology, we're talking global, because the hedgerows are covered by another act, which I did bring up there, in terms of the ancient hedgerows. We could even talk in TPOs and stuff like that. Now the point is that we live in the landscape with that kind of stuff, which is what you took up on this. That was part of it. And what I don't understand with these developers is people want to live in a landscape. We take the other developments, Sebastopol and things like that. You've got these hedgerows, some of which are hundreds of years old. That particular hedgerow was certainly that. It's got a lot of ecology in it, and it's desirable, and it was taken away. So you did that enforcement issue. So a lot of things going on there. One bit of policy is going across the other. So you put that enforcement, which I thought was brilliant. And I'll take phase thing. Developers come in. It ought to be to their advantage, and I've said this before, by the way, that they take that precious environment and use it as part of their development. Some of us don't like that. We'd like to see Greenfield still there, but we lost that argument. They're putting houses in there. Nice big thick hedgerows stay there. And it's got a lot of ecology in it. It should be a nice place to live. I don't understand why they did what they did, and you've enforced it. And it should stay there. Ancient hedgerows go back a long time. Give everything. That's what why it's there, and it's about corridors of stuff there. So there's a lot of policy things all in there, which should be to the advantage of the community and the developer. And I think what you've done there is good. It's very interesting what you've done there.
Jason, next.
Thank you, Chair. Bit of an interesting hot topic, this one. I know it's been running for a while. My biggest concern with it was the disregard in which residents' views were made from the developer, and I was pleased to receive a letter from them on the 22nd of May where they apologised for their actions over the previous 12 months. So I'd like to acknowledge that and say, again, thank you for that. I'm pleased that they're going to set up a steering group, and I would encourage local residents to get involved in that to make sure that they do have their say and that their views are being heard, and obviously work with local councillors to make sure that that is successful for the next phases going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Glyn and then
A bit of a controversial question, I hope. Are we allowed, I'm presuming Taylor Wimpey will bring forward other planning applications in the borough. Are we allowed to remind members of the planning committee of this issue going forward?
We are.
I don't think committee would need to be reminded of it, to be honest with you. I think they will remember.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean within the next 4 years, but going forward after that.
I think planning committee will remember it, but I think from our point of view, we do take each case on its merits. I do believe in my discussions with the developer that they very much regret what happened. The one gentleman in particular we were dealing with said that this is not the way that he normally works, and I don't think they would want to be known by that legacy. So I am confident, obviously I can't guarantee anything, but I am confident through my discussions that moving forward, they have learnt their lesson. I'm hoping committee won't need to be reminded of what's happened.
Anthony.
I think this debate and the petition and report's been quite useful, really, to put down a marker, especially as Stuart said, Councillor Ashley said, with South Sebastopol going on at the moment. Because I think we do need to put a bit of a marker down to say we're not going to be prepared to be pushed around by large developers who think they're perhaps more powerful than the council is. Because I'm concerned with that we make sure that the developers of South Sebastopol stick to what they're allowed to do and don't ride roughshod over that. So I think it's been a useful debate, and I hope this debate and this report is sort of used as a marker so that it gives you as planning officers more power, if you will, to make sure that what's agreed is enforced rather than what's convenient for a developer that wants to make a profit.
Stuart.
I come back to what the developers say. They put in their hyperbole on their documents, this is a pleasant place to live, and then do that with it. And that's what Anthony was just saying now. We got a community, we're building communities, and they say that in all their documents. You can bulldoze a hedge out of the way, you can't put it back. I'm reminded of what Steve Williams says about all the things you get in a hedge and a wood. Once you've taken it out, it's very difficult to stick all that stuff back in there again, all the fungi and bits of ancient woodland. You can't build that back in again.
You.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for those members who are not, who are present today, who are not on the planning committee, the officer's right. We don't need to have a reminder of this. This has been extensively discussed at the last 2 planning committee meetings. As the officer said, TW did breach the 106 agreement by removing the hedgerow on the original application. A lot of work has gone on in terms of making good, reinstating that particular wildlife corridor, the ancient hedgerow. They sent a letter of apology through. They submitted revised planning applications for the further phase of the site with greater emphasis on the ecology aspect. They've agreed to put in place this planned competent person to oversee that the works are undertaken, and the issue of punitive action being taken by Torvine was also discussed extensively at the planning committee meeting. The planning committee officers felt the best way forward was to negotiate with TW to get them to reinstate and make good the damage that they've done, and certainly they are aware of the more aware. There's a heightened awareness of the impact on their actions and ecological aspect to the future application that they submitted. And members of the planning committee also did specifically request that planning officers had oversight of this as well and managed it. So not just go along at the beginning, but go along at the end as well to ensure that the developer has actually undertaken all the works that they said they would do.
Norma?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bevan has said a great deal that I was going to say. I won't repeat it, but the Planning Committee are very aware of the problems that arose, and we congratulate the officers for the hard work they put in to overcome these issues. And we're all aware that in future we need the conditions specifically as requested by the committee to stop this happening in the future. And, you know, the fact that the developers sent a letter of apologies to the committee, I think that was the first one. I can't ever remember that happening before. You know, they really did take seriously the complaints, first of all of the residents, and then the committee and the officers taking it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Faye?
I'd like to say something quite controversial. I'm not sure how it's going to go down, but I feel that these big corporates can come along and do things, and then afterwards perhaps we try and tidy it up, and in this case we're giving it a good go and they've agreed. But they're allowed to tear all sorts of trees down wherever they need to. Obviously sometimes they need to put houses in the way, but our ordinary residents, because we believe in trees and the oxygenating things that they give and the ecology, our ordinary residents often have trees that are quite dangerous and quite difficult to manage in their gardens just outside their houses, and they're not allowed to touch them. And, you know, trees that are healthy often can't be trimmed, can't be cut down, yet sometimes they're underneath, the roots are underneath people's houses, and they're, you know, causing accidents outside where people walk. And so the ordinary residents are not allowed to do anything with trees, but these big corporates come along and they chop them down on hedgerows willy-nilly, and I think the power balance thing there is disgusting. Thank you.
some trees are protected, some trees are not protected. The protected trees, and this doesn't matter whether it's on which land it's on, but when a tree is protected, we as a council have decided that it can't be taken down or any works done to it unless they make an application. So it isn't true to say that no works can ever be done on protected trees, but it means that an application needs to be made, and in a lot of cases we will grant certain works to a tree that doesn't affect the integrity of the tree. But if a tree is healthy, even though it's causing problems, I acknowledge those problems, leaves dropping close to windows, causing shade, the tree in itself is something that we would want kept. And our policy at the moment is where a tree is healthy and it's protected, we wouldn't want to see any works to it that would spoil that. Whether we decided on a different policy in the future remains to be seen. But currently, yeah, protected tree would be given that protection.
Thank you for that, and I sort of understand why. However, I do know of two instances, one where an old lady had a very nasty accident because of trees on a path close to someone's house, and another incident where I'm sure the roots grow underneath a lady's lounge, passed into her house, and yet those trees, you know, they slight trim back of some branches if she can reach them, but the county does nothing, and yet these big corporates chop down trees, take away hedges willy-nilly.
Okay, members, I'm just going to bring in Fiona, and then I think we're going to have to end there because obviously we're deviating from the actual.
That was what I was going to raise, actually, is that if Councillor, if you'd like to talk to me outside of this meeting, I would like to hear it, and any other instances that members may have in terms of trees, because this is a great opportunity now to start informing on how we would move forward. The intention is that we are looking at our tree policy and how we can make it a practical but holistic policy going forward. But yeah, if anybody wants to come and have a chat with me about those issues, please do.
Thank you.
Okay, members, so if we do that outside the meeting, okay, we come forward to Fiona. But we're just dealing now with this particular petition, with the report. So recommendations are on page 349 of the agenda. Can I have somebody to move and second those recommendations? Thank you. Now, show of hand, all those in favour of that. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 17, page 353, Code of Conduct, the ICT Protocol, to the amendment to the Constitution and the offer of member support. Can I ask Lynn Williams, Head of Business Support and Intelligence, to present the report for us, please?
Thank you, members. This report is seeking approval to make a small number of amendments to the Code of Conduct for Councillors, including the ICT Protocol, as set out in the Council's Constitution. These amendments, mainly updates to current working practices and staffing structures, are set out in summary in paragraphs 5.2 and 5.3 of the report. These have been considered by both the Council's Democratic Services Committee and the Ethics and Standards Committee, both of which have agreed to recommend them to Council for approval. In order to make the necessary changes to the Constitution, I would like to ask Council to agree to add to the recommendations of the report delegated authority to the monitoring officer to do so, to make the changes. This report also seeks approval from Council to adopt a defined offer of support for elected members, so it's clear what support members can expect to receive within the current allocated resources. This isn't part of the Constitution, but will be published, if agreed, on the Members' Hub, the Members' Support Hub. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I'm concerned about 5.2.4, about members may only use their personal ICT equipment, smartphones to access Outlook services through webmail, blah, blah, blah. No personal information, including attachments and emails, should be saved to personal devices. This is not permitted. As quite a paperless council, and there's many of us in here, the supplied council phones aren't really fit for purpose because there's no data provision on them. It's okay if you're next to a library or using an unsecure hotspot. You could perhaps log in to do your email and different things, but when you're actually out walking your ward, you can't send anything via email, can't open anything, can't look for it. So I think, as councillors, we should be having some sort of data provision on our council handsets. Until then, I find it difficult to support this with our little paragraph in there, because without my personal device, walking around the ward, this is going to tie my hands too much. I can't function as a modern-day councillor without data on my phone. So I'm going to find it very hard to support unless we have data put onto our mobiles. So I don't know whether the rest of the council feels this way. It's just something I've picked up reading through this document.
Deslin, if you could come back on that, especially because I know me and probably others turned down the council handset, so we only have obviously a personal device.
That addition was made in consultation with the council, CSIRO, and that's about making sure that data is protected. If you need additional information, I'm going to have to ask Lyndon to come in on that. There is some data provision on your mobile phones, but if that is something you'd like us to look into, obviously we can do, but there would be a cost associated with that.
Hugh first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I take issue with point regarding the portable appliance testing on the bottom of page 359. Just entered my 7th year now as a councillor. Apparently this is an annual requirement. I must say not once during the last 7 years has anyone contacted me to arrange a portable appliance test on any electrical leads for the computers that Torvine have provided, or indeed the printer that I had before. So I want to get some clarification on that, please.
Portable appliance testing is undertaken each year by the council. That reference within the Constitution and the Code of Conduct relates to officers going out to councillors' homes, so that's not required. Now you're all equipped with portable lightweight devices. You're expected to bring them into the Civic Centre when those tests are being undertaken, in the same way as officers, and they will be undertaken. If members are not being informed of that through email, then I need to pick that up to make sure that we get that undertaken straight away, but it is done on an annual basis.
Stuart next.
This business about being accessing data on personal devices, there's a simple way around it. If you've got it behind a firewall, then it's secure anyway.
I'm afraid my knowledge of ICT doesn't go that far. I will have to find that out for you. If that is an issue for members, then I can take it away and explore it for you.
Can I come back? Because the point is that some of us have to function on other authorities. I'm, for instance, community councillor and on another authority. So I've got about 3 different things all I'm functioning on. So I think some thought needs to go into this problem, because as a representative of this council, other councillors here are exactly the same, Fire Authority, Brecon Beacons, things like that. We're all on different authorities. We have to use the one bit of equipment to function on all of them. So we could be contravening a few things. I think some of this needs looking at.
To ask if Lyndon's willing to sort of come in and, address some of these points.
Good morning, members. Just in regards to devices, the council provides you with the ICT equipment that you were given on your induction and other elements, and I sent an email around quite recently just advising members how to access the secure email accounts, because we're talking about the data that you have secure onto your machines, which should come through onto your laptops. In regards to your personal devices, you can use your personal devices. You go through AWO, which is a system of coming through the web into your email accounts. But what you can't do, and what we won't allow to happen, is for documents to be downloaded on that, because it's insecure and it goes outside of the SRS farm. In regards to you using your devices across various agencies, they are subject to their own protocols within those agencies. You can access your Torvine accounts through any SRS portal. So if you're in Blaenau Gwent or you're in Newport, you can use your SRS device then. Outside of that, and you're using your personal device, and Councillor mentioned there about using it around the ward, we can look at putting additional data on your phones, but that will be subject to an additional cost, and we would have to look into that. Many people use their own personal devices and the data used on that, because that forms part of their normal contract that they take out with their provider. So there are some options we can look in there. What we can't afford to happen, however, is for non-secure devices to have access to the corporate network. We won't allow that to happen.
As
I said before, I'd rather use the council IT equipment and the council phone. At the moment, I have no choice because there's no, data provision on the council phones other than to use my own. I'd much rather keep everything separate, my own personal day-to-day equipment. Although I got free data on there, I'd rather keep everything completely separate. So when I finish the day, I can shut it in a drawer and not be bothered after a certain time. But I can't because I've got to use my own equipment when I'm out and about because, as I said again, there's no data. So although this document is really good in principle, I can't see that I can actually support it at the moment from a personal point of view because we haven't got no data. If we can have assurance it'll be looked into and there would be a data provision so that, because at the end of the day we are trying to go completely electronic and paperless so I can use the council equipment and I support it 100%, but until that time I'm going to find it hard to vote it through without it being looked into for extra data for councillors.
My concern is that this is fine in what you're saying, but my computer spends more time with SRS than it does with me.
Would it be helpful if we could perhaps get perhaps a Monday afternoon seminar in the future to just go through some of the IT equipment that you have and perhaps go through how you access it and how you can get onto your email accounts and we can perhaps look at that as an event comes through. But really want to impress on members. The rules have changed now around GDPR. We have to be far more careful now how we manage, store and distribute our data. You have been allocated equipment. Now, whether that equipment may need to be looked at if there's something that perhaps is wrong with that, or maybe there's some additional training that we need to put in to place with members. But from a cyber perspective, having to look at how we manage and govern our information as an authority, I would much prefer you to be using your council equipment than your private equipment, because your private equipment doesn't come through a secure network.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of seminars regarding the GDPR, if you like, which is a big topic as such, and I believe your stance is belt and braces, if you like, in regarding that, which is fine. However, I think what we've also got to consider is basically what is the minimum as well, if you like, because as councillors we are out in the community and trying to access the general public, and so it's okay going down the route of belt and braces, but if belt and braces is too much, that then basically is stopping us from basically working with the general public. And so I think we need to possibly go the other way as well to say what's the minimum that is required as well.
That's an interesting comment. The purpose of the last two seminars have been really around, whilst you're operating within the council environment here and you're linked into our secure networks, then you're fine. It's when you're doing your ward work and if you don't have your privacy notices in place or you're not managing the private information that you collect. The purpose of those seminars was to advise members around how best to protect yourselves from the potential of being in breach of the regulations. And yes, we'll be taking a belt and braces approach, but I'd rather do that until we know through case law or some other elements of where there could be a decrease in the approach that we take here. As part of the authority, I'd rather take a more stringent view on we want to be more on the side of secure than perhaps looking at the minimalistic approach.
I take on board that, but I still think that we ought to be looking at what the minimum is, if you like, in order to basically to be working within the community. And
I don't think we actually know what the minimum is. That's because it's all new. Hence why we look at it on the side of caution rather than risk.
Anybody else?
Some authorities, taking Bristol for example, operate an open data
system with their thing. They still have safeguards in principle. The problem we've got is that if you engage with on your ward work, is you actually need to take things like photographs. The equipment we've got here, and I take Giles' point on this, is not up to taking photographs, it's not up to half the comms function. When I first came on this council, which was a term back, we had a little stick phone. I certainly wasn't up to the job, I still got the thing somewhere. So technology has advanced, also data protection has advanced, and I think what the problem we've got is how the hell you lock it down, how you do things with it. That's your problem in a way, isn't it? And it's SRS's problem. We tend to advance ahead of what we've got because we know it's out there. And they've got all these plethora of phones and ways of doing things. I don't envy you there, by the way, Lynn. I'd like to hear some answer to this because we've got to get an integrated system and data protection. I know that. But we need some sort of system that works.
Just in terms of open data as a system where we allow data that's generally collected across the council to be used and reused by organisations, it doesn't come within the ICT security element of it.
Yeah, fine. As I said, we're doing this because of the GDPR. So I started using my Surface now. I've scrapped my own personal iPad, and I want to go the same way with my council phone because I don't want to be the first person to be had on in the GPR and the GDPR with the council. So I just want to make sure that the equipment I'm supplied is actually fit for a modern day working councillor. I don't want to be using my own equipment anymore. I want a phone that I can use data on, that I can go and do my work in the ward. I don't want to use my own stuff anymore because of GDPR. I want to be safe and secure and protected. That's why I'm highlighting it now.
I can certainly take that back and have a conversation with my colleagues in Democratic Services on member support with IT equipment.
And I think, as you said, Anthony, if we have, well, obviously go through seminars, but I think perhaps you'll have to contact, because me personally, obviously, I turned down all the council equipment, so we're going to have to go back and obviously be issued with it. And I expect there's probably other people in the same situation if this goes through, because obviously I won't be able to use it. Richard?
Would it be helpful, Chair, if on the recommendations on 355, we defer recommendation 1 and refer it to the Democratic Services Committee, so 7.2 becomes 7.1, and we move that recommendation. So we defer the ICT recommendation for further consideration, and then we go ahead with the second, now first recommendation, if members are so happy with that, rather than lose the whole report.
Be happy, yeah? Okay, so I've got a mover and moved for that one. Seconder, thank you. Okay, show of hands then on that recommendation. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 18 then, page 369, securing our future severance payment. Can I ask Rachel Jowett, Chief Officer of Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection, to present the report for us, please? Thank you, Chair. I'm not standing over there. I won't be able to see over the lectern. The report before you today is to approve a severance payment. Regulations under the Localism Act require councils to approve chief officer severance payments which come to over £100,000. The definition of severance payment is outlined in the report in paragraph 5.3, and I think it's important for you to understand this is not the entire cash sum an officer would receive, but it is also the pension strain that would be borne by the authority as well, if the individual is between the age of 55 and 60. I must stress that the figures provided in this report are maximum figures that would be incurred through a change process, but are dependent on a process which would only be initiated subject to your approval today. The Welsh Government regulations require these reports to be in the public domain in terms of transparency and accountability. But for that reason, I cannot share with you the individuals or the service areas to be affected because we have not yet gone through that change process. I do appreciate that for council, you might then say, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but I can assure you that the proposals in this report are based on a fair review and there will be a process to be followed. The report outlines the principles of the approach to be taken, the rationale and the business case for me to begin a process of change. The report is seeking the principle of costs to be incurred, and then I will be working, subject to your approval today, with the Head of Paid Service, the Chief Executive, to embark on a consultation with colleagues on how the department could be changed to deliver better outcomes, reduce duplication, and in the long term also save money. I will stress this is not just about saving money, it is about ensuring we are fit for the future, but I also am very conscious, and you'll have had member seminars recently, about the financial challenges which you also face in this council. In terms of how I have arrived at this today, the first 6 months, so I started in November, I spent a lot of time listening, watching and engaging with colleagues across the department. Since that time, the department has also expanded as well, which also gives further opportunity, but also we need to review as well. In terms of what came out of that engagement, there's a huge appetite of goodwill for delivery within the service. I was awed by the commitment that were given by officers. However, I will say that in terms of some of the changes that have happened in the last few years, we do have issues of resilience in certain areas. We have issues of succession planning. And also there are areas where we do know we can improve in terms of our quality of services to deliver. So this is what, if the severance cost is approved today, I will begin a change process, and those are the outcomes we are trying to deliver. We're trying to deliver reduced duplication and realignment of services, because I do recognise that there are areas for improvement, and also particularly in terms of the frontline services, reinvigoration and renewed leadership. If you approve the costs outlined in the report today, it will then initiate a process of change and consultation. The eventual outcome, which would be a reduction from 5 heads of services to 4. I will stress that the individuals affected by this change will be treated fairly and in accordance with the Council principles and values of supportive, fair and effective, and therefore recommend that Council approves the severance costs as outlined in the report. Okay, members, any questions or comments on that? Okay, the recommendations are on page 373. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 19 then, this is page 379 of the agenda. Appointment of the replacement head of Democratic Services. Delith Harris, Monitoring Officer, can you please present the report for us?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to appoint the newly designated Head of Democratic Services for the Council. The Council's current Head of Democratic Services will leave the authority on the 1st of July, and the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 requires a local authority to designate one of its officers as the statutory Head of Democratic Services. And it is the role of the Democratic Services Committee to designate an officer as the head. That committee met on the 19th of June and agreed to designate Lynn Williams, the Head of Business Support and Intelligence, as the Head of Democratic Services. This role requires an in-depth understanding of the democratic and scrutiny functions of the Council, as well as senior level experience of operating at the officer and political interface. The committee felt that Lynn Williams could fulfil this role and commented on the excellent work she was already doing for the Council. So this report is being brought before the Council as the Constitution states that the appointment must be agreed by full Council. So the recommendation is to agree that Lynn Williams, Head of Business Support and Intelligence, is appointed as Head of Democratic Services. Thank you.
I'd like to move the recommendation. I think 5.2 is very telling. It says the role requires an in-depth understanding of the democratic and scrutiny functions of the councils, as well as senior level experience of operating at the officer and political interface. I think in sort of more sort of vernacular terms, that's sort of putting up with our procedures and putting up with all of us. And I don't think there's anyone more experienced at that perhaps than Lynn is. So I have every confidence that she'd do a fantastic job as the Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the leader. I've worked with Lynn for many, many years, as we all have, and I think she works really hard in the department, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to take that role up with the knowledge she's got, and I will be voting for her, yes.
Ray?
Thank you. We did discuss this at quite length at the Democratic Services Committee, and we unanimously agreed that Lynn was the perfect person for the job.
Members, recommendations are on 381. They've been moved. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Show of hands then. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. The recommendation is agreed. Then moving on to agenda item 20. This is member question time. There are 2 member questions today. Can I ask Councillor O'Connell to ask your first question?
Thank you, Chair. On the 2nd of June, there was an event held at Cumbrath Stadium titled Stop This Brexit Madness, which was hosted by Torfaen's AM Lynn Neagle. Given that 60% of the borough voted to leave the EU referendum, can the majority party clarify if it supports its AM in attempting to subvert a legal democratic result, or if it stands with the majority of the people of Torfaen who gave its politicians clear instructions to begin the work needed to exit the EU and position Torfaen for a prosperous post-EU environment?
Okay, and that's for Councillor Arfian.
I think Lynn is a fantastic AM and wish there were more politicians in the world like her, honest, straightforward and tenacious. So yes is the short answer of your question. I stand fully with the AM for Torfaen. Regarding the title of the event, Lynn was a speaker, not an organiser of the event, and I believe was the first to question the title of the event and if it was appropriate. However, if we're focusing on language, I would ask how expressing an opinion in a democracy can be labelled a subversion. On the wider issue of Brexit, I respect the hugely varied views of members and defend entirely their right to express them in one way or the other. I would appeal to both sides of the debate to dial down the anger, hyperbole and divisiveness that sometimes characterise this debate both before and after the referendum. I voted Remain, but people I like and respect voted Leave, even members of my own family. They are not demons, they just have a different view to me. However, I am still massively concerned about the impact of Brexit on our local economy, especially given the total uncertainty for the UK government about what post-Brexit arrangement it wants, and given the massive stakes for employment in our valley and beyond. Take the concerns of Airbus this week for just one example. I totally reject any suggestion that these honestly held concerns are incompatible with respecting local people. It's because I care about local people and their jobs that I have these concerns. If I was to perhaps use an analogy, it's a bit like if your sister decides to get engaged to a bloke you're not really sure about. You want to be happy for your sister and you want to respect her right to marry who she wants to marry, but if you find out he's cheated on her and he treats her badly, does that mean you can't question to her whether she wants to go through with the marriage? This is the dilemma that those with concerns about the impact of Brexit on jobs have. That doesn't mean that I will pause for a second in making sure that whatever the settlement, that we get the best possible result for Torfaen and for Wales and for our wider economy. But I do have, and I do share with Lynn, honestly held concerns about the impact of Brexit on our local economy, on people's jobs and on our economy as a whole.
Councillor O'Connell, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Just given the leader's concern, I'd be interested to know what actions the Council has taken to prepare for the EU Brexit in, I think it's 7 short months' time.
That's a far more fair question, I believe. We've been working with the WLGA. I attended a conference last month, I believe, about Brexit. We're working very much with the Welsh Government, with the UK Government, with other councils as the WLGA to make sure that whatever happens we're best prepared for it and that we can make the best of whatever situation we have post the end of the Article 50 talks.
Okay, Councillor O'Connell, could you ask your second question, please? I think this one's for Dave Young.
Thank you again, Chair. Torfaen has undergone huge change, with many primary, junior and secondary schools having been closed down and sold to developers as part of the 21st Century Schools programme. While I don't wish to debate this issue here, I do think it's right that the Council addresses the huge sentiment felt by Torfaen's residents that is rightly attached to each of the closed sites, and I would therefore like to ask that the Council places a commemorative plaque or a board at the entrance to each site to acknowledge the existence of the school's history and the fact that thousands of children were educated at each location.
Thank you, Jason, for the question. It's quite a poser. First of all, because it isn't a question necessarily, it's a request. But nevertheless, it's a request that has at its root some basically decent sentiments that I certainly am comfortable with, and I dare say that everybody else in the room would find favour with. Unfortunately, it's not for the Education Service to comment on these matters, because the request is about what happens after the Education Service disposes of school sites. This particular request is perhaps more properly in the remit of either planning and more likely asset management. I have had a conversation with Victor at Asset Management, and on that basis I'm more than happy to continue with providing some sort of an answer. The reality is that most of the surplus schools under the 21st Century Schools programme, and I don't think it's necessarily a pedantic issue to suggest that under the 21st Century Schools programme we haven't closed many schools. It's only a handful. I presume you're talking about going back over the last 20 odd years. Then the number mounts up, but certainly under the auspices of the 21st Century Schools programme, there have been a minimum amount of school closures. The reality is that most of these surplus school sites then have been sold on, and consequently the request, such as you've mooted, can't be unfortunately addressed retrospectively, so we're caught in that particular trap. For future reference, it might be worth noting that developers undertake public consultation events which offer the ideal opportunity for the community to influence how they wish to commemorate the site in question. Examples of how this has worked recently and quite successfully is the naming of streets at the new developments at the erstwhile school sites of Llantarnam and Trefethin. At the behest of their local communities, these streets were named after James Prosser and John Jobbins respectively. Now, there might be some kind of confusion in some people's minds because the James Prosser incident, for example, James had a plaque mounted in the entrance hall to the old Llantarnam Secondary School for some time, and I believe I'm right in saying that the family were offered the option of that plaque being transferred to the Cwmbran High School after the amalgamation. The family issued that opportunity in favour of the promise that once the site had been developed they would have a street name after James, and that duly happened. That said, the Council considers that the locally developed memorials, such as the street naming, is far better as an outcome, or providing an outcome, than having the Council impose what they call a fixed standard sale condition, which at the same time is perhaps not resonating too well with developers and potentially with a negative impact to us as a Council. They may not be the kind of memorial preferred by the local community anyway. So that's the way in which the Asset Management Department have identified for the future, and I think it's useful to bear that in mind. I'm more than happy to support any such measure, but I hope you'll understand that I can't speak for the Education Service on this because it isn't in the Education Service's remit.
Okay, Councillor O'Connell, do you have a supplementary question?
Just to say thank you for the comprehensive answer. I agree with you in that it's probably a retrospective request at this time, but I think it is important that we recognise as a council the emotional attachments people feel to these sites, and if there is any way we can recognise that in a physical board, I think it would be appreciated by members of the community.
Thank you. Agenda item 21 is the date of next meeting. So for your information, members, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, 24th of July, 10 a.m. in the Council Chamber. Agenda item 22, Cabinet decisions from the 1st of May 2018. Members, Cabinet decisions start on page 383 of the agenda. There were no challenges to any of those decisions. Are there any questions about them? In that case, are you all happy to note those decisions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Evans, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. It's in relation to the library strategy. I see that there's delegation to the Chief Officer to make some minor alterations to the strategy and structure. I wondered if you could have any information in that regard.
Okay, I'm not sure because we're kind of limited. Yeah, Rich.
Yeah, in terms of the library strategy itself, the strategy was not changed as was endorsed by, first of all, went through scrutiny, scrutiny's comments were taken on, and then what went to Cabinet has been the finished document as signed off. In terms of the consultation process, a staff consultation process has gone through, and I have authorised the beginning of a management of change process to achieve the £200,000 saving.
What I was referring to, Rachel, was you said that you could be making minor alterations. I wonder if you could give us a flavour of the minor alterations that you were mentioning there.
It was just typos and grammar, nothing about the content within the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Must be happy to note those decisions. Yeah. Okay. Then agenda item 23. These are the Cabinet decisions from the 5th of June. Page 387 of the agenda. Again, no challenges. Are there any questions about them? No. In that case, are we all happy to note those decisions? Thank you, members. Those decisions are noted. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for your attendance and contributions. I remind you to sign the attendance register, the personal interest form, return your cards to the wall, and to the end of the council meeting.